Troglodyte warning. There's a storm brewing in the UK, and there has been over the last 10 to 15 years. People are really sick and tired with the status quo. We saw this last summer with the riots that were a symptom of a deeper malaise in the UK. And people want change. They are sick and tired of the same old, same old. And there's certain things we can't talk about in the UK. Certain people, certain influences, and if you do talk about them, you are called certain names, this and that. And I think over the next few years, it's going to be easier to talk about these people. So, what has happened in the last 30 years in the UK? Well, from the happy 90s, when the end of history, communism was defeated by capitalism, we had a time of prosperity from the 90s to the 20 up until the 2010s. There was prosperity, and then we had the economic crash of 2007 2008, and the Tories won and implemented austerity, which gave bailouts for the banks, quantitative easing in the billions to the bankers. So they were fine, they got their bonuses. But the average person had their welfare cut, their public services cut, teachers' pay was cut, police officers were cut. They cut 20,000 police officers, they cut nurses, and people actually felt this. There's a study, a Glasgow study, that said 300,000 people died under austerity because of cut to public services, to care systems, to public services that literally are life saving. Often it was disabled people and the most vulnerable that were harmed, older people and disabled people. And I'm sorry, this is state murder. And since then, over the last 14 years, our infrastructure has been crumbling. People are really desiring change. And there's a lot of discussion about how we offer change. How do we challenge the system? And we can't talk about really how to challenge the system in a way. We can't talk about it. They don't want us to talk about how the system works. You don't hear politicians talking about real change. You don't hear the mainstream media talking about how we challenge the system. You don't hear figures like Piers Morgan or big YouTubers really talk about it. They are more likely to talk about immigration, trans issues, vegan sausage rolls, and people, I don't think, buy into it. The majority don't buy into what we're being told is causing the problem. I really believe that people are intelligent. They see what's going on. They see the politicians, and I want to have hope in Starmer. I really do. I really want him to do well. But I don't think he will. I don't think he can deliver fundamentally. And since he's cut disability benefits, I just think, what is he really offering? Yes, he's done some good things, some, VAT on private schools. He has done some good, but it's not enough. If you want to challenge the system, you need to be radical. You need to offer real alternatives, a £15 minimum wage, a Green New Deal, a vision for the future. That's what people need. They need to be excited. They need to be energized by what the future can hold. I mean, the technological advances over the last 20 years are there. The potential investment is there, but you have to have the political will to actually have a vision for the future. And our politics doesn't lend to that. It doesn't. All Labour are thinking about now is, what can they do to get into power next time? And they're not thinking big. They're not thinking in 10, 20-year blocks. They're thinking, right, we can cut benefits a little bit, make a saving here, a little bit of tax increases there, little bits here and there, and that's all they can do. Whereas reform are offering massive spending, both spending and tax cuts, which they can't do. And Farage has already said, like, yeah, well, probably can't do that. And neither is Trump going to deliver. He can't deliver. He can't cut grocery prices. He's already turned back on that. He won't be deporting 20 million people. So when will we start to talk about the thing that we can't talk about? Well, an interesting fact is that in the UK, 466 billion pounds is situated in 5 families. And that's half of the wealth of the British population. So you've got 50 families, 466 billion, and then 33.5 million have the same. And it's predicted in the next 10 years, 2035, it's going to be 200 families that have the equivalent wealth of the British population, which is 68 million people. 200 families, 68 million people. And this is what we're not allowed to talk about. We never talk about it. The economic inequality in the UK, which is objectively the cause of most of the social ills we face. The disparity in wealth causes so many issues. It's correlative to crime, mental health illness. That's the big one in the UK. Mental illness is a huge one. And there are countries that are more economically unequal than the UK. But the English speaking world is unique. For example, America, Australia, Canada, and UK are fairly unequal. America is more unequal than us, and we're pretty bad. Australia and Canada are a bit better, but we have a unique mental health illness phenomena that is based on our culture of consumerism and the need to have status, to have a certain job, to have a certain lifestyle, and own certain things, and be a certain type of person. And that's made us miserable in the UK. We are truly a miserable people. And a big chunk of it comes from the economic inequality, which causes stress. It causes a constant treadmill where you're just working and not getting on. There's no social mobility. There's no chance to really get on and move out of your socio-economic status. Statistically, you are pretty much going to stay into the situation you were born into economically. And people know that. People know that even if they go to university, they are saddled with massive debt, tens of thousands of pounds. There's a chance they may not pay off. They may not get a graduate job, and they have to pay that debt off, or maybe they never will. And that goes on to the taxpayer. So people need to really think about the stories they are told, because over the last 250 years, at least, since the introduction of the Industrial Revolution in the UK, people at the top have been telling us who the real problem is. They've been, and this has been going on for hundreds of years, if not longer. The real problem is not the wealthy, it's the immigrant. The reason why your wages are low is not because I choose to make them low, so my profits are higher. It's because of an immigrant that actually is contributing to the economy. And actually, if they weren't here, our economy would be smaller. And it's so potent. It works. There's a reason why people talk about the last 20 years, and that's been huge over the last 20 years. But this has been happening for a long time, and it's the same old story. And people still buy into it. People still buy into that story that it's the immigrant, it's the stranger, it's the other, it's trans people, it's Muslims, it's anybody but the white native citizen that is responsible for your why you're so poor, why you can't afford a house, why the NHS is on its knees. It's never the people either in power or the people with all the wealth, those 50 families that have half the wealth of the UK population. We never talk about that. We're not allowed to. Like, when do people talk about it? Like, we aren't allowed to. People aren't allowed to talk about it because people say, oh, you're just envious. It's the politics of envy. No. If you're walking down the street after buying a new MacBook Pro and someone rips it out of your hands, you're upset, you're angry. You maybe defend yourself, maybe you attack them back. Is that envy? Is that an example of envy? No. It's an example of anger, justified sadness, and a justified pursuit of self-defense. It's self-defense. When we are being robbed by the people who have all the money, have all the power, and are consolidating that power and wealth, it's pure self-defense to go, actually, we reject your narrative. Again, there's a huge multi-billion pound project of propaganda to tell us constantly that immigrants are the problem, that trans people are the problem, woke is the problem, the culture war. It's all a distraction. And with social media over the last 10 years, it's just made us more polarized than ever. And they know exactly what they're doing. The idea that, you know, at the inauguration with Trump, he had Jeffrey Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk, three of the richest men on the planet who control so much of our lives. Facebook is massive, Amazon massive, Elon Musk, Twitter, and his influence is massive. And it's the immigrants that are a problem. It's the criminals that are coming over the Mexican border that are the problem. It's not Trump. It's not Peter Thiel. It's not Mark Andreessen. It's the desperate people who come on small boats. It's the trans people who are, more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrate violence. It's the Muslim that comes over here to have a better life and contribute to Britain. They're proud to be British and they love their country. We've been hoodwinked. We've been completely deceived. We've been completely manipulated. We've been gaslit. I don't like that term because people overuse it and misuse it. But we've been gaslit that we're being told constantly that somehow people at the bottom are the problem, not the people at the top. It's constant punching down. And I think people will wake up. When their lives don't improve, maybe Farage comes into power in a few years and his life will improve, but the average person's life doesn't improve. People will get upset and they will want something different. And I think things potentially are going to get worse before they get better, maybe much worse. But I think there is hope for the future. I really do have hope for just how good people are inherently. I don't like to talk about inherent values, but I think people inherently are good and we have to incentivize good behavior and we have to see people as people and not just be selective of how we show our empathy. And yeah, I do have hope for the future. I really do, for the UK. I love this country. I'm proud to be British. And there is hope. You have to have hope because otherwise you'll just leave the country. And the more young people leave the country, the worse it's going to get. So if you want to help me challenge this narrative, hit the like button and I'll see you next time.